Well, Simon Gerrans, firstly, welcome back to the country, and how are you coping with jet lag, another long return?
Thanks, Matt. Well, it's nice to be home, but I tell you what, my head is spinning. I think I did 13 odd flights in the past 4 weeks, and I lost count how many countries I went to. But great to get back over to Europe and touch base with a number of friends and colleagues, get a bunch of work done. But in all honesty, at the moment, I don't know whether I'm coming or going.
What was the trip in aid of?
The trip was all about my role with the service course, actually. So I hadn't seen many of my colleagues there since the middle of the year when I was in Europe for the Tour de France. So it was just great to get back over there. I spent a few weeks in Girona. I got to Nice. I spent a little bit of time in London, and I got up to our UK store in Wilmslow as well. So all the fun stuff, staff reviews, that sort of thing. But it was just great to be back over there, get involved with a couple of the events that we were running, and just be back on the ground in Europe for a while.
Did you have much time on the bike yourself?
No, not at all. I think I got one, maybe two rides in per week while I was there. I just buried myself in with work. So I did our sort of Sunday Salida, what we call our Sunday morning shop ride in each of the locations when I was there. We also hosted a big gravel ride in Girona while I was there as well. We have a gravel bonanza. And that was just fantastic. Over around 100 people just having a fantastic time riding together.
Who are some of the riders that you had on there, either ex-colleagues or ex-rivals that you might have had on the ride with you?
A few ex-colleagues and a few people that are involved in the service course as well. So the gravel bonanza that we did in Girona, George Bennett came along, Sam Bewley, Mike Woods was there as well. So it was fantastic to see those guys and catch up with them a little bit. While I was in Wilmslow, I ran into a few former teammates in Ben Swift, Steve Cummings, Adam Blythe. I bumped into in the shop as well. So really good to see those guys. While I was in Nice, I rode with Harry Sweeney, who was in town and just getting his season started. So just a really good way to reconnect with, the guys that are still racing now and a bunch of guys that I raced with in years gone by.
How'd your form stack up?
Or fortunately, these rides are very sociable. That's the whole idea of them, just about engaging with the local community. So they're a very gentle pace, and that's pretty lucky for me at the moment in my condition.
I heard a rumour that you're contemplating entering a gravel race.
Contemplating, yes. I do need to put a bit of structure back into my riding again now, and I figure there's no better way to do that than have a race to work towards. So it's just an idea of getting myself a little bit fit again, but it's still a ways off yet, so I've still got a little bit more time up my sleeve.
Now, you do know that the best way to promote the service course, the business that you're overseeing, is to enter the gravel event and win the gravel event.
Well, not necessarily, because I think it's more about entering the gravel event
Are you
and getting
sure?
amongst it and just being in the community, drinking a few beers with people and just promoting the brand. My days of winning bike races and working towards winning bike races are a few years behind me. So I think it's more about there, just getting out there and having a good time and really promoting what the service course is about.
Yeah, all right. We'll have this conversation when you pin a number on. Speaking of
True.
pinning a number on, next year, and this has been a topic of conversation for the past week or so, Sergio Higuita is leaving EF Education. He's going across to Bora Hansgrohe. He was caught out on a social media video riding the bike for next year, the Specialized bike, instead of this year's Cannondale bike. As a result of that, EF have terminated the remaining month and a half of his contract. It's not the first time this has happened. He was a little unlucky, but he conceded that he did the wrong thing. But by the same token, you need to get ready for next year. Something needs to change in the system.
Higuita wasn't unlucky. He was stupid.
Okay.
All he had to do was get a piece of electrical tape or two and put it over the writing down his frame set where it said specialized and make some kind of effort to hide the fact or just mask the fact that he wasn't riding a team bike, and he would have been fine. I think EF Education First got so offside because he was blatantly not riding a team bike. I think the teams understand that everyone is going to be riding their next year's team bike come the end of the season. But it's when you just sort of put it in their face is when you come into trouble.
Can we reframe stupid to perhaps naive?
No,
Oh,
because
okay.
Higuita's been around for a few years now. This is not his first team change. So he's going to be very aware of the expectations of his teams. So I think for me, it was just pure stupidity.
Okay, this is, as I said before, it's not the first time that it's happened. So there have been some warning signs, some examples out there for him in the past. And I remember famously from the documentary that was put together on the Green Edge team. There's the footage of when the Green Edge team was being launched, and you've all come together for training camp. The team hasn't existed in the year prior to it being launched, and it looked like it was a peloton that was out there racing because everybody was there in different kit. Do we need to change the calendar for when the contracts run, as opposed to being a calendar year, have it be the race calendar year?
Yes, most definitely. And I think it needs to be UCI-led decisions. It's not up to teams to change their contracts because the teams are pretty much, or many riders are pretty much riding on a pretty standard UCI formatted contract. And that quite literally runs calendar year. Whereas we're all very aware that's not in line with the racing season. So it would be quite easy for the contracts to sort of start and finish around the end of October, basically the end of the racing season. There are not too many training camps and things like that before that point for the following year. So it makes total sense to align the contracts around those dates.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And then you do the normal process of doing all the training camps for the next year, the publicity shots, etc. And then you're able to actually push those out there, and everybody gets the 12 months of the contract with a particular rider and the sponsors and so on. But you get the opportunity to push your promotion at the right time.
Yeah, that's right, Matt. I remember lining up for team photos on like pre-season training camps where there would be someone basically hovering around making sure that no public were in sight, that we're going to take photos and post on social media and things like that, because you're in next year's team kit, which is seen as a big no-no for teams. They kind of accept the fact that you're going to be testing new equipment and that sort of stuff, but there's no way they're going to allow you riding around with your new sponsors on before the end of your contract.
Yeah, on the topic of Specialised, locally on the Australian domestic scene, there's been a fantastic women's team, Specialised Women's Racing. They're coming to an end after 10 years. This is not a team that you will have seen in action much at all, Simon, because you've been based over in Europe for the past decade. But this is a team that's played a really important role locally over the past couple of years, particularly with Matilda Reynolds. She's won the Melbourne to Warrnambool. It's teams like this at that next level down, and you're involved with the Inform team. They play a huge role in helping riders get to the next stage.
Yeah, most definitely. It's always a tragedy when a team sort of folds. But I think as one door closes, another one opens. And for example, the Inform racing team, they are launching a women's team for next year as well. So I think they will pick up a number of riders from the Specialised Women's Racing team, racing domestically here in Australia. So it is a shame when it comes up, and these local teams or domestic sort of teams are so important for the development of riders. It's just a stepping stone for juniors or under 17 riders, for example, to aspire to racing on a domestic level.
Yeah, and somebody that hasn't raced much on a domestic level, Amanda Spratt, we're going to have a chat to her later on as she's recovering from a significant operation for her, and she looks forward to next season. We'll talk to her about a couple of the new signings for the Bike Exchange team. I'll catch up with Wayne Schwass. He's doing his pucker up ride over the next few days throughout November. It's fitting in Movember, and we've got a question that's coming for Simon about what riders do in their off-season. But next up, Gerro, we're going to do the classic thing that we do at this time of year. It's the year in review, and we're giving rider awards. Well, let's kick it off. First up, we're going to start with the best classics rider. And this one, best classics rider, male. Who's your pick?
Wow, that's a tough one because there were a couple of riders that won a couple of big races when it comes to classics. But there was no sort of standout dominant rider, I think, through all the Flemish Classics or through all the Ardennes Classics, for example. But for me, a guy that you'd always look at any one-day race was Wout van Aert. For me, he was a fantastic Classics rider. But then Tadej Pogacar, he won 2 monuments this year. Yep. So it's hard to look past him as well.
Okay, well, you've just named my winner. So my winner for the male Classics Rider of the Year is Tadej Pogacar. He won 2 monuments, and he picked up a bronze medal in the road race at the Olympic Games. He's my man. How can you go past somebody winning 2 monuments? I think he gets overlooked for that achievement because of what he did at the Tour de France.
You're probably right, Matt. If he didn't win the Tour de France, you would say he was the best classics rider of the year, but he was also probably the best tour rider of the year as well. So, yeah, he had an absolute stellar season once again. He's still only 23 years of age, and who knows what the future holds for Tadej Pogacar.
You think when you were young and coming into the sport, what Paolo Bettini achieved, and winning Liège and Lombardia in the one year, he was the star one-day rider. Pogacar has done that this year. and won the Tour de France. I think he was the best one-day rider of the year.
Yeah, and it's absolute fair call. Another rider that you look past as well, who won two big one-day races, Julian Alaphilippe. He
Yeah.
backed up, won another world title, and he also won another Flèche Wallonne. He was there and thereabouts in a number of the other classics, but again, another outstanding one-day rider.
And Mr. Entertainment. Across on the women's side, it was a little more difficult to distinguish without an absolute dominant performance, but I'm going with Annemiek van Vleuten. Her consistency, I love the way she goes about it. She was close again at the Olympic Games, not quite getting the win there. She was the winner at San Sebastian. She was always just about onto the podium and the other key races as well. I find it impossible to go past Annemiek van Vleuten.
Well, Annemiek also fantastic time trialist. Like she won the Olympic Games in a time trial as well. So I think if you were actually looking at not just classics, but one-day races, like one-out races, if you would include time trials in there, you would have to say Annemiek as well.
Yeah, she won the Tour of Flanders. She was second in Liège, best on Liège. I'm sticking with Annemiek van Vleuten. I'm happy that you're not going to argue with me. We agree. Okay, this one's going to be a little difficult. Best sprinter, male.
Well, for me, there are a couple of names that really pop up. Okay. And the first one may be slightly unexpected. Tim Merlier, I thought was very good. He won the opening sprint stage of the Giro d'Italia and then backed it up and won the opening sprint stage of the Tour de France as well. So for me, he was really impressive and not a guy that you talk about much in years gone by.
And on top of that, I reckon Alpecin Fenix made a mistake of not leading him out in another couple of stages, and they went for Jasper Philipsen. If they had have stuck with Tim Merlier, I think he might have been able to win another one and maybe poached one of those 4 stages off Mark Cavendish. I thought he was fantastic. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, then other name into the mix, you can't really go past Cavendish as well. I know he had by far the strongest lead-out train in the Tour de France, the strongest team committed to the sprint finishes. But yeah, with Mark Cavendish's wins and another green jersey at the Tour de France, you have to throw his name in the hat.
You win 4 stages in the Tour de France and sprint finishes. You are the sprinter of the season for my money. But Wout van Aert beat him on the Champs-Élysées.
Yeah, but Wout van Aert, he also won up Mont Ventoux and he won an individual time trial. So he was just doing everything at the Tour de France.
Yeah, I'm going with Mark Cavendish. He's my male road sprinter of the year.
Would you say he was the male road sprinter of the year, or he just had the best lead out?
Well, as I think it was Ilio Kaiser said, there was the question that was asked, who was the best sprinter of the year? Ilio Kaiser said, whoever was led out by Mikel Mørkøv.
Yeah, well, I think it looked like Mikel Mørkøv might have hit the brakes in one of those Tour de France sprint stages this year, so Mark Cavendish should get another victory up. But yeah, he was absolutely outstanding. And that's probably another, he's in a league of his own, so you wouldn't even have to have a classification for the best lead out.
Yeah. Best female road sprinter of the year. This was pretty simple in my opinion. Lorena Wiebes, she won 13 races. She was the absolute standout. And then in second place, it was a lot tighter. I've been a little bit biased here with an Australian bent. Chloe Hosking, she didn't get a lot of opportunities because she had some health challenges earlier in the season with COVID, etc. But once she got back, she came back to her normal winning ways.
Yeah, Chloe Hosking, she's such a competitor, isn't she? I saw the documentary that you did on Australian sprinters, and just hearing about her background and into the sport and getting into sprinting. Her father teaching her how to throw headbutts when she first started riding. So she's a pure sprinter.
Okay, so on to tour riders. What is that?
Next door neighbour's Gardner.
Okay. Okay, now for what I think is a pretty easy decision. Best tour rider, starting with the men first. Can anybody go past the Pog with his second victory at the Tour de France?
What about the Rog? He's been pretty good as well this year. Like, he had a pretty consistent season. I think he had the most amount of victories of any male rider. And the fact that he had sort of such a devastating loss at the Tour de France, yet he was able to back it up, obviously in the time trial at the Olympic Games, but then to win a third consecutive Vuelta a España. I thought he was really good, but I have to agree with you. I think Tadej Pogačar was a standout rider once again.
Yeah, he was really good. But Tadej Pogacar, you can't go past him. He won 3 stages. He won a time trial. He won 2 mountaintop finishes in the yellow jersey. Since entering the pro peloton as a 19-year-old, his worst ever result in a tour was on debut at the Tour Down Under. He was 12th or 13th. That's the worst he's ever performed in a tour of any length, whether it be 1 week or 3 weeks. Incredible.
I think the big question with Tadej Pogacar is how many tours can he win?
Yeah.
Like to have 2 under his belt already at only 23 years of age, and like you said, such an incredible palmarès in stage racing at such a young age. What can we expect from this guy?
Oh, like we talked about before. I've got him down as the Classics Rider of the Year. He's won 2 monuments. He's won the Tour de France. It is a phenomenal result. It's been a long time since we've been talking about a Tour winner winning multiple one-day races, particularly within the one season. It's an amazing performance. And he went to the Olympic Games and he picked up a bronze medal as well. It is enormous. It's a career in one season.
Yeah, it certainly is. And what's really refreshing about Tadej Pogacar is he's not racing defensively. He doesn't look like he's
No.
racing with all the pressure, all the expectation on his shoulders that he has to win or he can't get dropped or whatever it may be. He's just racing aggressively and he looks like he's really enjoying it. So, as long as he continues that way, I think we're going to see him dominate for so many more years.
He was on a podcast recently with Luke Rowe and Geraint Thomas on their What's Occurring podcast, and they were asking him, what's your weakness? They're looking for opportunities at Ineos to see where they can expose him. And he said that when he cracks pretty big or pretty easily or something or other. But I haven't seen any evidence of it. There's been no signs of him really cracking.
The one thing that he did raise a couple of times in the most recent Tour de France is he doesn't like the heat. He was concerned about the really hot stages. You're thinking early on in the tour, the weather was fairly mild, and he was concerned about the hot Pyrenees stages. So maybe that's one thing that might cause his undoing. Maybe it was the reason he only finished 12th in his first Tour Down Under because of the hot weather in Adelaide. But maybe that is his one flaw. When they get those really hot conditions, he may suffer that little bit more.
Yeah, so everybody, instead of doing a rain dance, everybody's doing a heat dance heading into next year's Tour de France. So best tour rider, female. For me, this was pretty simple. I had to go with Anna van der Breggen. She won the Tour, the Giro de Rosa again. She won the Volta Burgos. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see really much coverage of the Giro de Rosa because of its conflict with other races, the limited coverage from it as well. In her last season in the Pro Peloton, she's gone out with a bang. She's finished the way she started, all class.
Yeah, that's an outstanding season in stage racing, isn't it? And what a shame for us that we're not going to get to enjoy watching her in the Tour de France Femme next year. How good it would have been to see her racing, on the world stage. It's a race that everybody's going to be paying a huge amount of attention to.
I thought she might have gone one more year. I thought she might have reassessed that retirement and gone one more year, but she's achieved everything she can possibly achieve. This year she won Flèche Wallonne for the 7th year in a row. You know that race well. That's extraordinary to win it 7 times.
Oh, that is extraordinary, and I think it's a full credit to her to know that it's the time for her to walk away for the sport. And I think walking away on her own terms, really still walking away at the very top. Not many athletes in any sport have the opportunity to do that. So I'm really pleased for her that she's been able to do that at the end of the 2021 season.
Okay, now the crystal ball, looking a little bit to the future, as we got revelations of the year, starting with the revelation of the year, male. For me, this is pretty easy, but I want you to go first to see whether we agree without me influencing your decision.
Well, I've got 2 names down here, and the revelations for different reasons. And I think the first revelation is one that sort of is a little bit closer to home because I was really impressive to see Michael Storer, what he did, basically winning the Tour de l'Ain and then coming out winning 2 stages of the Vuelta a España and the Mountains jersey. I thought that was outstanding because he's been in the Pro Peloton for a couple of years now. So we kind of knew who he was as an Aussie. But to get out and win those results in such dominant fashion, I was really impressed with him. I thought he was a fantastic revelation. The other one for me, a revelation for all the right reasons, Fabio Jacobson. I know he's a rider that's had fantastic results in years gone by, but he had an horrific crash and I think many people wrote him off. So to see him come back and win again at the welter at the end of the season, I was really pleased for him. So that was a bit of a revelation to see him back at his best.
I like him, but I've got two different names for you. One of them is from Western Australia, just like Michael Storer. Ben O'Connor on debut into fourth at the Tour de France with a stage win. Massive. That was huge. He was definitely the revelation from an Australian perspective in terms of the amount of publicity that it created. The best debut ever by an Aussie. A higher place finish in his first appearance than both Cadel Evans and Phil Anderson. Awesome result. But even he was outshone by this year's second place finisher at the Tour de France, Jonas Vingegaard. He was early season knowing that the tour next year is starting in Copenhagen. He was hoping that his year would be good enough that he'd get selected by Jumbo-Visma to go to the tour next year starting in Copenhagen. I think he's done enough to get selected for next year's Tour de France.
Most definitely. And Vingegaard didn't even come to mind, actually, because I was thinking about riders who won. But Vingegaard, he may not have won much this year, but the way he raced at the Tour de France, it was actually flawless. When you think about, he went in there in a support role, and he was very quickly thrust into the limelight when Primož Roglic crashed out, and he just didn't falter after that. He was there toe-to-toe with Tadej Pogačar all the way to Paris.
The second half of the race, he was actually 13 seconds faster, which gets lost on people. And I think that Jumbo-Visma have got a decision to make for next year's tour, particularly with, I think it's stage 4 or stage 5, that whatever it is that they go across the cobblestones. He looks like he can handle that stage better than Primož Roglic. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do and how they protect both those riders on such an important stage.
Well, it's a good problem to have for Jumbo-Visma, isn't it? In a team that, we're probably the best team of 2021. We don't have a best team on our list here to chat about. But yeah, Jumbo-Visma, they just have so many cards to play.
Okay, revelation of the year, female. I'm going to throw two names at you. One of them, the winner of the world title this year, Elisa Balasamo, but she's already got some great results. She's been brilliant on the track. She's won junior world titles, massive step up. She'd already been signed by Trek Segafredo before she won that world title, and it was a brilliant win. And I loved her composure. If they had an under-23 category, she was still eligible for the under-23 category. But she's got Mariana Vos sitting on her wheel. She's got Elisa Longo Borghini giving her the lead out. Longo Borghini looks over the shoulder with about 200 metres to go, about to flick the elbow and swing off. And Balsamo shakes the head and says, I need another 50 metres. I loved that composure. And she beat Vos to win the world title. But the ultimate revelation of the year, and surpassing Jonas Vingegaard as well, if there was only one title to give, it has to be the Olympic Games gold medalist from the women's road race, Anna Kiezenhofer. I was on the couch at home using Dr. Google to find out more about her throughout the race. And it's my job to know about the professional peloton. She was a massive revelation. What a win.
Yeah, there were two really standout results there. And both, I think you would say, come completely unexpectedly. So it's really nice when sort of an underdog gets up on the biggest stages that there are in cycling. So yeah, I think they're a couple of great candidates.
Okay, so the best overall male cyclist, best overall female cyclist of the year, I think it is no argument, for me anyway, best male cyclist of the year has to be Tadej Pogačar. 2 monuments and the Tour de France. He was unbelievable.
Yeah, no argument for me whatsoever there. And I think I was looking through this list and saying, okay, best classics rider is Tadej Pogačar, best tour rider is Tadej Pogačar. He has to be the best overall rider.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I would say the most complete rider, the guy that can win on the most different sort of courses, is Wout van Aert.
Sure.
He may not have had the number of big wins that Tadej Pogačar did this year, but he is a guy. I'm a big fan of Wout van Aert. I say that a number of times. He is so complete, and you can take him to any race, and he can be a contender.
Yeah, you just look at those 3 different stage wins at the Tour. To win twice going over Mont Ventoux, to win an individual time trial, and then to beat Cavendish and co on the Champs-Élysées, he's an absolute joy to watch. And then he fronts up for the cyclocross season as well. Amazing.
Yeah, very, very, so complete. And who do you have as the best female rider of the year then?
Annemiek van Vleuten. And I will not be having a debate about it because she chose not to ride the Giro Rosa because she was targeting the Olympics. It was bitter disappointment for her, the silver medal in the road race at the Olympics. There was clearly communication issues amongst the Dutch team. Some of them knew that Annie Kiezenhofer was still away. Annemiek clearly didn't. She bounces back from that disappointment, and then she manages to win the gold medal in the individual time trial. She won a bunch of one-day races. She finished second in a few as well. Winning the Tour of Flanders is a pretty big victory. She won San Sebastian. She won the tour, the Walter Challenge, so she won some tours as well. She, for me, making the move then to Movistar as well. Actually, the Movistar women's team had been there for a couple of seasons. She made that team actually exist this year, really, for the first time. Annemiek van Vleuten was the standout female cyclist of the year.
So unlike our standout male cyclist of the year, who we think has many, many years of victories ahead of him, how much longer can Van Vleuten go for? Because how old is she now, 38 or 39?
38. She's 38, I think. Well, she's gone to Movistar, and Valverde's fronting up at 41 for another season. So they're probably banking on another 3 years from Annemiek van Vleuten. I think she's got a few left in her. She's not getting any slower.
No, she's showing no signs of slowing down whatsoever. So, yeah, credit to Annemiek just to be winning at that level. And like we said, I think she's still got a couple of years ahead of her.
She is awesome. Somebody else who we hope has got more than a couple of years ahead of her is Amanda Spratt. Here she is now with our regular Chat with Spratt. It's our regular Chat with Spratt, and Spratty, fair to say, there's been a bit happening. How did the operation go?
Yeah, hi Matt, good to be back. I'm going pretty well now. The operation was 3 weeks ago to the day almost, and the recovery's going pretty well. I was released, I like to say, from Holland on the weekend, so I did have to spend 3 weeks up there. I had 5 days in the hospital. The surgeon was really happy with how the op went. I have 4 nice new scars. I have 10 centimeter one on my stomach, one in my groin, 2 on my leg. So quite an extensive op, quite a serious op. So I did have to stay the extra 2 weeks in Holland just to be there in case something went wrong. But pleased to say it's all been fairly smooth so far. Quite painful. I wasn't independent for a while, which I hate. So I had to try to become less stubborn and annoy the hell out of everyone around me. But I had great support, and I'm in a good place now.
You not independent would have been a real relationship tester. There's a few things that test relationships. That's one of them. The other is renovating a house.
Yeah, so that definitely tested things, trying to let go of that, and I think I've just become more annoying. And I was really lucky that my coach came up for a couple of days, and his wife is our team osteo as well, Ellen, so she was there looking after me a bit. So I've had fantastic support the whole way through, and annoyed a lot of people probably, but really grateful for all the support I've had.
So going back a step, give us the breakdown of the injury and what was done in the operation without too much gore, because I've just had dinner and my stomach's a little sensitive.
All right, I'll the G version. So basically, I have iliac artery endofibrosis, which means that the artery that supplies blood to my legs has become really narrowed, and when I am riding or when I'm racing, doing efforts, I'm basically not getting any blood to my legs. Hence, my performance has just basically in the last year just gone down and down and down. So what they can do in the operation is they essentially have to replace the bit of artery that is destroyed. And they do that by taking a vein from my leg and cutting the bad bit of artery off, shortening it, and then replacing it with the vein. And so they call it a vein patch or a vein graft. And so they basically cut in from the front, have to go all the way down to where the artery is and replace it and then stitch you all up. So I have many, many, many internal stitches, which is another reason why the recovery is so long, because, for example, now I can't lift anything for 9 weeks. December 21st, I can start lifting things. So, and that's mainly to do with all the internal stitches, because if I burst one of those or break it, then that can mean the operation's a failure. So it's sort of being really, really careful for the next period as well.
Which also is going to be really difficult. We've spoken about this before. I can picture you when you're being told, okay, you need to rest. Your response would be, how many reps is that?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. I went to the surgeon just before I left Holland, actually, and he was saying, with the recovery, you need to take it slow. It's really important, this and that. And then and I have to do a couple of walks a day just to keep the the leg moving and that the artery doesn't get stuck in one position. And he said a couple of small walks, and then I questioned, what do you mean? How long is a long walk? What's my limit? And he just started laughing and said, typical athlete. And and then I went, well, I need to have a Garmin, a watch to measure my heart rate, because I can't have my heart rate over 100 either for the next 9 weeks until December 21st. Not that I'm counting. But that's been good and also bad, because now I'm looking, and every kilometer it tells me how fast I'm walking. So now every now and then I'm trying to do a PB, and then I have to think, no, it's not about this at the moment. So there's still that part of me that wants a goal or something to challenge me, but all within reason. So it's been, a testing time, but I think in some ways just good to slow down a bit as well. And I'm trying to just embrace that.
It's a lockdown of a different kind. It's a physical lockdown. It's a below 100 beats per minute lockdown. One of the other things that's happened throughout your recovery has been the announcement of the course for the Tour de France next year. Clearly, that's going to be a pretty big target for you. What was your reaction to seeing the course overall, your general vibe on it?
Yeah, really excited. I think they've done a fantastic job. I like the fact that, it starts with the sprint stages, we have some punchy stages, and it really finishes with that GC showdown on the last couple of days. I think, we've seen in the Giro this year, it was actually, they had the GC day on day 2, and then it was sort of just decided from there on in. So I think it's exciting that the yellow jersey realistically will change from rider to rider probably 3, 4, 5 times, and then you really won't know who's going to win the Tour de France until that last stage. So I think that's really, really exciting. All different sorts of courses. The gravel, I like gravel. I think it's a good challenge, and it's becoming, you're seeing it in more and more races now. So I do think it has its place. And I'm pretty pumped about it. I was talking to my coach yesterday, and I told him we had to stop talking too much about the calendar because I was getting too excited and my heart rate started rising. So,
and that was on the couch.
Yeah. So it's really it's definitely helping me get through this period as well, knowing that that's such a big goal for next year, or all of July really, with the Giro and the Tour.
Yeah, good. Because whenever I look at any tour, whether it be a 1-week tour or bigger tours than that in terms of length of time, I always think, if I could only watch one stage, which stage would I watch? And for next year, for that tour, for the women's tour, it would be stage 4, the one across the gravel that you mentioned. Beautiful region through the wines, through the vineyards, and the gravel. I think that could be the one that really throws up a few surprises and has people that think they're okay, I can contend with the climbs, but I need to get some time on the other great climbers. That stage could be really interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so exciting, that it is catering to all different sorts of riders. And I think it'll suit an attacking rider, someone that's willing to be brave and go out there and put themselves out there. And there is certainly, there's other stages with like really sharp climbs right towards the finish, where you see someone like Kiezenhofer, that's her sort of finish. You're already thinking of what riders could, benefit from which stages. And I think, you're going to find everyone taking it really seriously. I'm already looking at the map, trying to figure out when I can go and recon the stages. So, I think there's just this whole vibe of real excitement around the event.
Yeah. There's plenty of excitement around your team as well. There's been quite a few announcements at Bike Exchange. New riders signed to the team for next year. I want to focus on the 3 Australians that have been announced recently. 2 coming directly in effectively from the track program. Georgia Baker, she's kind of like back on the team as much as anything else. And Alexandra Manley. What can you tell us about those 2?
Yeah, I have to say I'm really, really excited about all 3 of the new old Aussies that are coming on the team. Georgia obviously was with us, but only for a really short time in 2017, and she already showed such great potential there. And I'm really excited to see, especially in the classics, what she's able to do. Alex Manley as well, when she was with the team, she was progressing step by step. But when she was with us, I always thought, I wish she would just commit to the road, because she could be so good. And so now I'm like so excited that she's back, and she said my priority is the road. They'll still do some track from what I understand, but the priority will be the road. And I really think she really has not shown what she can do. And I think she's, someone that can be really good in the hilly races as well. I see her similar characteristics maybe to someone like Anna van der Breggen, or this kind of rider that can be good in all sorts of races, and you're really excelling those hard races too. So that's exciting, I think.
And the third one is new to the team, also coming from a track program, but she's done plenty of racing on the road in the National Road Series, is Ruby Roseman Gannon. I'm a little biased because she's from my region. She's one that I think has got a huge future in the sport, and she's a great signing for the team.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've seen Ruby the last particularly the last couple of summers in Australia racing. And 2 years ago when I did the Australian summers, she's someone I was just so impressed by. She was beating Chloe Hosking in some of the sprint stages or, thereabouts, or almost beating her. And I think we all know Chloe's one of the best sprinters in the world. So that already said a lot what she can do there. And then watching what she did last summer against Sarah Giganti, she was there, almost holding onto the wheel of Sarah over the climbs. And I just think, having spoken to her as well, I just see that real drive, that passion, that willingness to learn, she's in it for the long run. And for me, that's something I've said exciting a lot in this podcast, but it is something really exciting for the team, for us. And I think she's going to go a long, long way in the sport, and really pleased that she's going to be my teammate.
You've touched on a few key things there. She can fight on all fronts. She was in the track program as part of the team's pursuit, and she might still make the team's pursuit squad for Paris. So she can time trial. She's shown that with her performances on the velodrome. She was almost holding on to Sarah Gigante in the climbs at the Adelaide Festival of Cycling last year, or earlier this year, I should say, and she was sprinting alongside Chloe Hosking. She can do everything. And it is really impressive. Plus, she's just finished university. She's super intelligent. So she can come into it with university behind her, knowing that, well, if it doesn't work out, she's got plan B. And that gives her freedom to chase the dream perhaps for even longer and really nail it.
Yeah, spot on. And I think the other thing with Ruby is sometimes you see riders in Australia, they're really strong, and you think, okay, yes, they're really strong, but I'm not sure how they're going to go in the European peloton. It's pretty chaotic, those especially those classic races or the big one-day races. But for me, when I see Ruby and I see the way she races and gets through a peloton, then I also think for me, maybe there'll be a little bit of transition period, but I really don't see that as being an issue. And that's something, a huge asset that she has, I think, as well.
Yeah, she is the full package. Now, your test, you've still got a little while to go. Keep the heart rate under 100. When can you get back on the bike?
Well, December 21st is the week that I can resume training, or I can be on a training program again. But I've been told in 3 weeks' time I will be allowed to get on my bike for 15 minutes on the trainer, which could then progress to an hour on the road if everything goes well. But, I mean, I have to say, I put my shoes on yesterday and my heart rate got to 97. So I think, a few more weeks down the track, a few weeks of becoming less fit, I feel like I'll already be at 100 with one pedal stroke. So I could be on the bike, but it will be extremely slow.
Keep resting and get ready for 2022. I think it's going to be a big one, Spratty. Always good to catch up with Spratty, and some exciting new signings for the Bike Exchange team. Looking forward to seeing particularly how Ruby, Roseman, Gannon goes over the next couple of years. But Gerro, Wayne Schwass is a good friend of you and I. Great footballer. My mum loved him when he played at North Melbourne, a premiership player there. Didn't love him so much when he went to the Swans because she was a rusted-on shin boner, but he's a pretty handy bike rider.
Yeah, well, Swatters does quite a lot of riding now, and the Pucker Up ride's been going for a few years, and I think he just saw cycling as a fantastic tool to bringing a group of people together, to raising awareness for mental health and suicide prevention. So Pucker Up ride's a great cause. I'm looking forward to getting involved with it later this week.
He's not the only one that's using cycling to raise awareness about mental health issues.
No, that's right. Owen Duell, rider, currently races for Ineos Grenadiers, changing to EF Education First next year. He is doing a ride on the 27th of November, starting and finishing actually from the service course in Wilmslow, where he's going to be doing 2-hour loops, starting at sunrise and finishing at sunset. He's encouraging people to come along and join him and donate to his Movember course.
It is a fantastic cause, and he was also a stage winner of the Jaco Herald Sun Tour into Warragul a couple of years ago, so we give him plenty of support as well. But let's now have a chat with Wayne Schwass from Pucker Up. Well, Swatter, it's good to have you on the podcast before the ride, so I can get a few cheap shots in first before we go out on the bike ride to Mornington. First up, explain Pucker Up. What does it stand for?
So it's a Hindi word, Maddie. And first of all, thanks for having me on the podcast. Really appreciate it. And I've been a long-time listener of you and Gerro. It's a Hindi word, and it actually means authentic and genuine. And it took me about 4 months to almost by accident find the name. When I was thinking about the name for the organisation that I founded, it had to do two really important things. One, it had to be deeply personal to me, but also it had to be something that I believed that we could share with other people, encourage other people, inspire other people to start to apply that authentic and genuine approach to their mental health and emotional well-being. So said another way, open and honest. So why is it deeply personal? Well, for those people who don't know my story, I was neither of those two things for 12 years. So I hid my conditions for a very long period of time because of shame, because of fear, because of embarrassment, because I thought that it was weak. So they're the two most important values that I live my life by every day, Maddie, and that is that, it's really important to my well-being and my health, physically and mentally, that I'm authentic and genuine about it. So I need to do everything I have to do, which I do every day, to be taking responsibility for it. But especially when life gets challenging and I'm feeling anxious or depression or anxiety or obsessive compulsive disorder, which are the conditions that I've managed over the last 26 years, come back into my life, I need to be really open and honest with the key people in my life in order to bring them into what's happening, but then do the things that I need to do in order to recalibrate and start to feel like I'm back to the normal myself. But it's also something that we are passionately committed to in encouraging more people every day to be authentic and genuine about their mental health and emotional well-being, because having worked in this space for 16 years, Maddie, the vast majority of people, and I'm going to conservatively suggest here, more than 80% of people aren't being open and honest about their mental health because they're worried about what the response will be. We're trying to eliminate that, because when we can have conversations like the one we're having right now, not only do we give ourselves permission to talk about these important subjects, but we normalise it. It's my hope in my lifetime that we end up living in a world where we talk about mental health like we do physical health. And if we can do that, then we've fundamentally shifted the fear and the stigma, and we've removed the barriers that prevent people from talking about it and then getting the appropriate help.
You talk about those moments where things aren't going well and you've got those challenges. And from the outside, it's not necessarily obvious, because I've listened to you speak and you're on the dais, the MCG, and you got the premiership medallion around your neck. And that was one of the darkest periods of your life, which from the outside, it looks like it should be one of the best.
Yeah, and with the benefit of reflection, a lot of growth, a lot of sort of unpacking everything. That's a very special moment for me. I mean, every time the AFL Grand Final is on, it evokes great memories. It's a special day. I'm incredibly proud of it. But the reality, as you said, Maddie, my situation was, yes, I became a premiership player. I performed reasonably well in the biggest game of my sporting career. But at a personal level, I was really unwell. I was living with a lot of suicidal ideation, so thoughts of not wanting to live. I was grappling with the three conditions that I mentioned before. And unfortunately for me, there are only two people that knew. And one of those people was my ex-wife, who was at the game. And the other person was an incredibly important person in my life, and that's my doctor, Harry Younglick, who's still my doctor now, 35 years on. And those two people kept me alive during a really difficult period. And I shared a photo about that in 2017, of that photo you were referring to. And I did that because I want people to understand that you can be a high-profile, successful athlete, football player, cyclist, doesn't matter. You can be a politician. You can be a successful business owner. That doesn't preclude you from dealing with these conditions. So I use that as a way of really trying to challenge people to think it's got nothing to do with material possessions or how successful, how rich or how poor we are. Every one of us has the potential of dealing with these conditions, even athletes. So I use that as an opportunity of challenging people in the way that they think about these issues.
Why did you use cycling as a vehicle to be able to do that, to tell that story?
Well, it's a good question, and I think unless you've look, I'm just someone who loves the sport. I love the sport, but I think it's one of those things, Maddie. I got into it because in my last couple of years, I had to do quite a lot of cross training with the Sydney Swans. I sort of enjoyed that, but didn't follow it on. And then in 2006, Pucker Up is effectively the reincarnation of another charity that I created called the Sunrise Foundation. And in order to raise significant funds, we did a 10-day bike ride from Sydney to Melbourne. So as part of that, we trained. And I love the collegiate aspect of it. It was very competitive. You know what cycling groups are like. They're pretty forthcoming with what they think about other cyclists and who's going well and who's not. But I just love the camaraderie within cycling. So from 2006, you know, I've pretty much ridden all the time ever since then. And I think that this might resonate with you and your listeners. But cycling is really important for three very different reasons for me. Number one, it's incredibly good for my physical health, but it is the most important thing for my mental health, because I love a group ride, but when I'm stressed or anxious or I feel a little bit unsettled, I'll go on a long bike ride. And because it's me doing something that I love, I've got no distractions. It actually allows me to start to think and reflect on about how am I feeling? What are my emotions at the moment? It just gives me that time to process all of those things. So it becomes very meditative. It's a unique relationship. It is my go-to exercise. I don't do anything else from an exercise perspective. And I can't tell you the number of times where it has helped me find a solution. It's helped me work through something that was either problematic or stressful in my life, or equally, I've come back from a ride with an idea that I hadn't thought about before. That's one of the reasons why I do it. It's the closest thing that I've been able to find and connect with that is similar to a football environment. And that is, I ride with the same group of guys all the time. We've got that connection. We do something that we love. We have a bit of fun with each other. But there's that social interaction, which is really important in my life. And then the final reason why I do this is because I believe, Maddie, that cycling is the greatest metaphor, one of the greatest metaphors for life. And what I mean by that is, when you're riding in a group, you may know some people well or other people you've never met. But if you're riding in a group and you know what to look for, you can start to identify when someone's having a difficult day or a tough time on the bike. I don't need to know you really well, but I can roll around to you or roll over to you and just ask the question, "Hey mate, are you okay? You know, have you got some water? Do you want some food? Do you want a gel? Do you want to push? Are we going to stop in 10Ks? Do you want us to pull it back a bit so we get there?" And why I believe that's the great metaphor for life from my perspective is that's exactly what we're trying to educate people to do when they're off the bike. Once we know what to look for with regards to somebody who's under stress, who's not coping, who's feeling overwhelmed, who's behaving a little bit differently, we apply the same application like we do on the bike. Hey, are you okay? What can I do to help you? How can I support you? Do you need me to listen? Do you want me to talk? Can I support you to make an appointment to see a GP? We're not the professionals, but that's why I love cycling, because it teaches us to pay attention to what we're doing, but also be mindful of what's happening within the group, because it's about making sure that we help those people out who are having a tough day. And we have plenty of tough days in life.
Yeah, we do. One of the weaknesses historically in men, particularly in sharing emotional issues, is having that personal conversation. And I think one of the strengths in cycling of being able to share those moments is you're physically quite close when you're riding side by side, but we're not making eye contact. And it's actually somehow it's easier to get stuff off your chest. I've got that sense of connection with you because we're really close. We're in my peripheral vision. But you can hear some of those conversations, and you can hear somebody riding along. They might be going through a divorce. They're talking about separation, turning left, going further along, and you open up. And I think that's one of the great strengths of cycling.
Yeah, I've had some extraordinary experiences where random people in a group have ended up telling me things they haven't told other people. I think that a lot of us have those conversations. Either we're talking through what we're going through, or we're listening to what somebody's going through. And I think that you're right, Maddie. A mate of mine a few years back shared an article. I can't remember what paper it was in, but especially for a lot of men, you know, we're sitting here virtually talking face to face, and I'm fairly confident we could have a conversation about these topics together and be reasonably comfortable with that. But for a lot of males, they're not comfortable having that face-to-face, eyeball-to-eyeball a conversation. And whether it's cycling, whether it's golf, whether it's going for a long drive, whether it's going for a walk side by side, whether we're fishing and we're facing in the same direction, it eliminates one of the barriers that prevent people from talking, especially men. So I think that there's some truth in what you've just said. And again, if I reflect back on, 15 years of cycling, I've got off the bike sometimes and thought to myself, I cannot believe what I've just heard. And if cycling gives people that permission to talk, then I think it's a wonderful vehicle for people to start to have more open and honest conversations.
Because the heart of mental health, the key point at the sharp end of it is suicide prevention. And we're riding a specific distance across the 3 days of this pucker up ride. What is it and why?
Yeah, it's an important question that you asked, Maddie. Ever since we established this organisation, one thing that I've never deterred away from once has been our vision. And our vision, which is very optimistic, some people might say unachievable, but we've said it, is to eliminate suicide. We believe it's possible. It takes a lot of hard work. We've got a lot of work in front of us. And the way that we do that is by opening up these type of conversations, giving people permission to talk, inviting them into the conversations. And importantly, we've got a program, Foundations of Wellbeing, which we're just starting to roll out, which will educate people to take charge of their wellbeing. But everything we do, including the bike ride's not about the bike ride. It's about bringing people together from all experiences and allowing them to connect. It gives us an opportunity of starting to educate them from a pucker up perspective. But everything we do is deliberate. We're riding 331.8 kilometres over 3 days, starting this Friday. Why? Because it represents the 3,318 people that are no longer with us because they tragically took their lives. We don't shy away from it. And we also believe, Maddie, that there's 3,318 families, communities, that are still coming to terms with the loss and the void and the pain and the hurt that they have to deal with on a daily basis because a loved one is no longer with them. Well, it's our belief that we need to do everything we can to make sure that they're just not a set of numbers in a publication. Every one of those lives is a story. It's a human being. It's a male or a female. It could be a son, daughter, mother, father, grandfather, auntie, uncle, friend, whatever it might be. So we believe we have an opportunity but a responsibility to let those families who are grieving know that there are organisations and there are people that want to do their part to honour the lives of those people who are no longer with us.
And when you talk about those sorts of numbers, there'd hardly be a person in the community that through some small degree of separation hasn't been touched by it. Swatter, this is significant work. I'm looking forward to joining the ride on Friday. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Well, my pleasure, Maddie. I will enjoy it because I'm in the slowest group. You can just go hard and smash everybody in the first group, mate. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, mate. That's Wayne Schwass. Both Simon and I are going to join the ride for at least one day. Gerro, hopefully jet lag still impacts on you when we get out on the road.
Oh, let's hope it doesn't impact me too much. But if there's one way to combat jet lag, it's to get out for a ride on your bike in the middle of the day. And I'm really looking forward to riding with Schwatter and the group of people that are joining him to raise awareness for mental health and suicide prevention.
Excellent. We've got a question for you in regards to the off-season. So we're seeing more and more behind-the-scenes content during the season, and we get a pretty good idea what riders are doing between races and particularly at races, stage races significantly. But what's happening during the off-season? Do all the riders go away and take a holiday at a sunny beach island? Do they do secret training? And what happens on the team camps? Do they have much fun? Are there much team building? Or does it become competitive, particularly for the new guys into a team?
Well, what happens on your off-season is really dependent on what happened in your previous season and what you've got to look forward to next year. If you finish your season really late and you've gone really deep into the season, often riders will probably have a break and have it quite a bit later in the piece, just to give them the chance to recalibrate, reset, and go again for the next year. However, for the riders that are targeting the early season races, and I know we don't have a Santos Tour Down Under to look forward to next year as the first World Tour race in the calendar. But riders who are targeting, say, the National Championships in Australia and the early season stuff, they have to be putting in the hard kilometres quite early on in the piece because it's important that they establish a base before they ramp up the intensity too much, which means you don't have much time whatsoever for a long off season.
Is there a risk of not having enough of an off season?
Well, most definitely, but I think that really depends on what's happened in your season gone by. For example, I caught up with Daryl Impey while I was in Girona recently, and he's basically training right through because he had such a broken season due to injuries. He basically said, I can just afford to keep riding right through. I need to keep building on the base I established quite late in the year. So he probably won't have long off his bike at all.
For you, for your off-season, having the advantage of being in Australia, better climate than those that are stuck in Northern Europe in particular, did you feel like you were getting a head start, getting a bit of an advantage?
Absolutely. I was getting a huge head start on my sort of European rivals by having the opportunity to prepare in Australia in good weather. I would not miss a day of my preseason training due to the weather, where I'd be often looking at an app on my phone, just sort of smiling to myself, seeing how miserable the conditions were in Europe, knowing that a number of my rivals would have to rug up with thermal clothes on and front hours upon hours in the snow.
Did you have any holidays at a tropical island in your off-season?
Yes, I used to try and have a short break, but it was never really any more than about 3 or 4 days away. And sort of in the best years of my career, when I was really targeting the Tour Down Under in early season, I would probably not have any more than about 10 days off consecutively in my off season before I'd be starting all over again.
Well, I'm glad you've had more off before we go on the pucker up ride. I look forward to seeing you on the road.
Well, mate, I've had about 10 days off in the past 11, so there's no fear of me getting too much of a head start for the pucker up ride.
Awesome. I can always hold on just underneath the saddle. Thanks for listening to Cycling Insights. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to us. Leave us a review and recommend us to your friends. It makes a big difference to the show. We'll see you on the road.